Your Excellency, faculty, staff, students, members of the Georgetown and Qatar Foundation community, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. And thank you for taking part in this unique event for the Education City community. We are truly honored to have with us His Excellency Saad Sherida Al-Kaabi, Minister of State for Energy Affairs and President and CEO of Qatar Petroleum. Qatar's energy sector is undergoing outstanding transformations, led by His Excellency Saad Al-Kaabi. His Excellency plays a vital role in the development of Qatar, both in the management of the country's fossil fuel strategy and in the diversification of the economy beyond fossil fuels. We are particularly grateful to have with us a man who has been uniquely positioned to contribute to a great vision. A vision of using the country's wealth and resources to create a sustainable future for Qatar by pursuing investments around the pillars of human, social, economic, and environmental development. A vision that balances the needs of people today with the rights of future generations. Georgetown came to Doha in 2005 as a proud partner of Qatar Foundation with the mission of supporting the country's aim to develop human capital and research infrastructure towards a knowledge economy. Today's conversation engages a key leader of one of the world's most powerful economies, His Excellency Minister Saad Al-Kaabi. It's part of our effort to stay at the forefront of knowledge production and dissemination in Qatar and around the globe. Our guest today will offer us valuable insights into the development of Qatar and how our teaching, research, and service mission can contribute to a better future for the nation and the world. So, it is my distinct honor to introduce our esteemed guest, His Excellency Saad Sherida Al-Kaabi, Minister of State of Energy Affairs and President and CEO of Qatar Petroleum. His Excellency was appointed to his current role in November 2018, following a long career at Qatar Petroleum. Starting in 1991, in the company's reservoir and field development department, he soon became the manager of gas development, responsible for North Field management and development. For those of you who may not be familiar with the scope of this responsibility, the North Field is the largest non-oil associated gas field in the world. Minister Al-Kaabi oversaw major development projects that led to Qatar's rise to become the world's capital of liquid natural gas and gas-to-liquid production. By 2006, His Excellency was made Director of Qatar Petroleum's Oil and Gas Ventures Directorate, where he oversaw all of Qatar's oil and gas field developments as well as the exploration activities in Qatar. His leadership in the field was further recognized when he earned the position of Managing Director, President, and Chief Executive Officer of Qatar Petroleum in September 2014. And in 2018, His Excellency was made a cabinet member of the State of Qatar and Deputy Chairman of Qatar Petroleum, in addition to his position as President and CEO. His Excellency has a bachelor degree in Petroleum and Gas Engineering from Penn State University, which is very cool. I can go on and on, but I will be short because I know you're here not to listen to me, but to listen to His Excellency. The format of this event is quite informal. First, His Excellency will offer a few words about his journey with Qatar Petroleum and his new role and his vision for the future. And then I will ask him a few questions just to set the stage, after which we will open the floor for questions from the audience. Your Excellency, we can only imagine how packed your schedule is, so we thank you for generously taking the time to visit Georgetown, Qatar, and share your thoughts with us. So without further ado, I'll start. Tell us about your journey with Qatar Petroleum and how you managed to provide leadership to reshape such a diverse and complex organization. What are your short and long-term goals for the future of the ministry? And by the way, if you choose to talk about something else, I'll listen to you. I know how exciting it could be, so please feel free to ignore my question and talk about any subject.
Thank you very much. Thank you. First, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for inviting me to come here. It's always a pleasure to come to universities, especially. I don't do many of these talks, and to me, the main purpose of the visits I've done with a couple of universities before here is really more to talk to the faculty and students, because students are very important for our future, and faculties are very important because they actually teach all the students that come through, and they are there to teach many generations that go through the universities. So it's always a pleasure to be in institutions like here. Georgetown is a very reputable, of course, university. I was just talking to the dean that our new, we had a reshuffle in QP board. The new chairman, His Excellency the Deputy, His Highness, sorry, the Deputy Amir is a graduate of this university. So he was thrilled when I told him yesterday that I'm coming here. So, I made it a point to tell him because he is a graduate of the university. Regarding your question is regarding QP in general, or
no, your own journey? How did you get there?
Okay. I think there is a story that every time we have a graduation every year of people that come into QP. So all the graduates that we have scholarships that we have bachelor degree and some diplomas and technicians and so on. And every year we have an event where we basically celebrate them coming in, and we had one just recently. And every year they ask me to repeat the same story since I've been the CEO after they heard it the first time. Many in my family and my father, my wife, my relatives that are very close know this story, but I couldn't say it until I was appointed the CEO. But it's very motivational for newcomers. So when I graduated from high school, I was very good in math, and my father had an ambition for me to become an accountant. He was ambassador in the UK at the time. So the plan was I would go to London School of Economics to study accounting. And so that was the plan. So I graduated. I had a scholarship to go anywhere in the world to study because I was one of the top students out of high school. So one of my cousins came to me. He opened the newspaper and he said, listen, you're the smartest in our family, meaning the highest grade that graduated. He was about 5 years older than me. And he showed me a picture in the paper. So when he opened the paper, he showed me a gentleman with thick glasses. He had just basically finished his PhD. And the thesis was the largest gas field in the world in Qatar. And they were just publicizing his thesis. And so he said, if you go and study gas engineering, and we have the largest gas field in the world, you will become in this guy's place. So this guy's name was Dr. Jabir Al-Mirri, who was the CEO of QP. Immediately, I changed my track, and I called my father, and I said, I'm going to go to gas engineering. And at that time, I didn't know what QP is, or it was called QGPC, Qatar General Petroleum Corporation. So I had no idea what it meant, what's oil and gas industry and so on. Although my father, like most in his generation, started in the oil and gas industry. So he was actually working in Said at some point in time. So I changed track. I went to Pennsylvania. I think a boring story of why I chose Penn State, because we talked about Penn State, but I told him I want the coldest place in the US. And so he asked a friend from Shell, the CEO of Shell, because my father was in the UK. He said, give me the top 3 universities that you'd accept anybody coming into your company. So he said Tulsa, Oklahoma. Number 1 was Colorado School of Mines, Tulsa, Oklahoma, and Penn State. So I told my father, I want the coldest place. I live in a hot place. So I want to live, 4 or 5 years. So he chose because he knew north and south, and Pennsylvania is most to the north. But on a map, altitude doesn't show. So Colorado is actually the coldest. But that's how I went to Penn State, and I graduated. From there, I came into QP. I studied, basically, I went into drilling and production. So I worked in Dukhan oil field, which is 80 kilometers west of here. That's our only onshore oil field. So I worked a year and a half on drilling rigs and production in Dukhan. Then I basically switched to the offshore fields. So I worked a year and a half, week on, week off, on rigs and production stations. We have a Halul export island, which is basically our production facilities for the offshore oil production. I worked there for 6 months, which is also a week on, week off. Then I went into reservoir engineering. I became reservoir engineer, senior reservoir engineer, head of reservoir engineering, assistant manager for North Field, manager of North Field, which is the gas field that was mentioned by the dean. Then manager of oil and gas development, which is basically the entire, in our business, we call it the upstream business. So that's the main core of our company. I was there for about 7 years in that post before I was appointed as the CEO. So in all that journey, I was going to resign twice. I was very close to quitting, because of different things. You'll find when you go in that, some of you will graduate very soon. Once you get into the workforce, you think it's going to be, I don't know what your expectation is, but I thought it was going to be easy and smooth sailing, and you'll just get through and things will be very easy and so on. If you work hard enough, you will get somewhere, but there will always be people to put big obstacles and maybe walls in front of you. And it depends on how hard you want to get to your goal. I mean, if you have a goal and you want to get to it, it depends on you. If you want somebody to, spoon feed you information or teach you how things are done in an organization, or get you to, if you're an accountant, you want to learn from a senior accountant, either he's too busy or he doesn't, because, everybody here is different. You have some people that are very social and they will help you and they will try to help you. And some people will, when you talk to them, say, just get out of my way, So everybody's the same. We're in, whether it's in work, whether it's in college, it's the same. So getting a hard time while getting there is going to be a normal thing that you should expect. But perseverance is from consistency. And some in sports say consistency is the name of the game. I absolutely believe in that. You have to have the same work ethic. You have to be consistent, and you have to be consistent in everything in your life. You have to be, a good parent, a good worker, a good person in the society. You have to do well if you expect well. So I think you have to be good in really, or try to strive. You will never be perfect in everything. But if your motivation is to strive to be perfect in everything and to try and have a package of being a good person, I think you'll achieve something. But people trying to put you down or not support you and so on, this is going to be normal. You will have it, whether it's in the beginning of your career, in the middle of your career, and so on. But it's really consistency and being determined to get somewhere. And I think, there is the reason I say this story, because it's, I come from a wealthy family. I come from a father that was a diplomat. He was an ambassador for 25 years. He was an undersecretary for 6. I never asked my father once for a favor in my work. He never interfered in my work once. I entered the company and I took everything by deserving to get it and by fighting for it. He is the one that stopped me from resigning twice, because he said, you don't resign being a failure. Because if you resign at a point where people pushed you, then you've failed and they've succeeded. So he always told me, you resign at your terms when you're on top. You don't resign when you're beaten down. So I think it's always what you want to do with yourself. So as students and as people going into, young men and women going into the workforce and so on, you can do whatever you want depending on what you want to do and how much you are willing to give. long story, but I thought it's maybe interesting for
Thank
the
you so much.
students.
Thank you so much.
They keep telling me to repeat this story every time. So,
I missed the part that you wanted to resign twice.
Okay.
If I may fast forward, Your Excellency, from the beginning of your career to something that happened recently, and I'm sure this is a question on everyone's mind. Why did Qatar exit OPEC? Okay. And what do you see as the opportunities for and the challenges to the oil sector, and maybe by extension, what are the threats that the blockade posed, and maybe also what are the opportunities that the blockade created?
OPEC, of course, Georgetown, and politics and economy and so on, and I think this was asked earlier. But regarding OPEC, I was appointed as minister in November of last year, so a few months back. I have been asked to attend, normally the CEO of QP, you see, I mean, some of you don't realize, the CEO of QP and the minister were one position for 25 years. They were separated 5 years ago. When I was appointed the CEO, they separated the two positions, and November it was brought back again to the old scheme. So just orientation, if you will, of where we are. So I was not, when I was the CEO, when the position was separated, the minister attended, I didn't attend. So about a year before I was appointed, I was asked by His Highness to attend OPEC meetings. So I had attended about 3 OPEC meetings before I was appointed as minister. I will talk a little bit about what we did in QP and the transformation you asked about in oil and gas sector. I'm a practical guy. I'm an engineer, okay? So if something doesn't benefit, I don't want to be part of it. So basically my observation in the 3 meetings that I attended is that we attend, the big players, if you will, take the decision. We sit down and get dictated on whatever the decision is. Okay, so I would go and wait for an OPEC meeting to start. It's supposed to start at 10. Teachers, oil and gas companies, very punctual. We have, there is another meeting after this meeting, so you keep going. And the reason we have our setting today at 12:30 is I want to make sure I give you enough time, and whenever you tell me you can go, I will go. But if it was in the morning, I would have chain meetings, maybe 15 minutes each, so you go there, and it's all ministers, and the majority are oil and gas related, so CEOs with them and so on. And we wait there from 10 to 12 for the 2-3 big players to decide what they want to do with OPEC, and then they come out at 12 while we are waiting for 2 hours for the meeting to start to say, okay, this is what we've agreed to do. Okay, so this was my first experience of the first day. Second day is OPEC with non-OPEC, because this has become a new trend where Russia is also coming into this, where they have a second day, which is non-OPEC meeting. So in the OPEC, non-OPEC meeting, which is the next day, Russia with the big boys, if you will, okay, now have to meet, and then we wait again for 2-3 hours. Okay, I was told it's 10 o'clock start, so I'm waiting there at 12:30. I get agitated very quickly with the lack of punctuality and unprofessional behavior and everything in my life. So anyway, basically we start that second meeting, same thing happens again. So in observing 3 meetings, I came back after the June meeting. There was a summer break. In September, I met His Highness. I'm giving you a transparent, honest answer to what happened. So I met with His Highness, and I told him, this is what I just told you guys, is what I told His Highness. And I said, is it okay for me to study leaving OPEC? And he said, 56 years of OPEC, it was, the question was a weird question. You know what I mean? So I asked the question, I answered. Of course, I have a track record of things we've done in the oil and gas industry for the last 4 years. So there is a credibility of things that we've done. Okay, so it wasn't just, I came and threw something and So I said, I want to go and study it if you're okay with it, but it could be that they just don't want to listen to this, so I wouldn't want to waste time on studying it. So he said, fine, go study it. So we looked at the pros and cons of like any, if you do a study or students on anything, you look at pros and cons and see what are the gains. The positives, and I'm being very, very honest, okay? The positives is networking with ministers in one place. I'm not joking, okay? That's the only positive that we could find, okay? And I put a team, top market, even when the minister went, there is the marketing lead, so the VP of marketing, okay, is a QP who reports to me, a QP vice president. So executive VP of marketing reports to me as the CEO of QP. So he is basically attending all the OPEC meetings, because the minister going there, I mean, he's the guy that markets the oil and so on, so he has to be. So all my staff actually from QP are seconded to the minister for these meetings. So they basically do all the work for him. So it's QP staff, it's just the minister alone. That's why its separation was difficult, and now it's back again. So so the marketing, legal, and commercial, they all sat together. They brought consultants. They asked third parties to give them their view. I wanted to do a full-fledged analysis, and seriously, that was the only positive. Now, the negative is we're driven to do things where you're just basically dictated what you do, okay? And we have we don't have much capacity to increase oil anyway. We're very small in oil production. We're probably, very close to second or third last in OPEC. Now, the third element that was an added thing that we had from the legal side is the NOPEC legislation. And I don't know if you're familiar with it or not, but basically what that does, if the US Congress, and actually after we left, they had passed it now to go to Congress, which basically says that if you're an OPEC member and the US sees you affecting their economy by manipulating pricing, so you're controlling production, so thereby you're increasing or decreasing prices, and they could go to court in the US and have a case against you, and then ask for penalties and financial penalties and so on. And what that would do is would give them the ability to confiscate assets of that country in the US. Okay, so basically, due to our huge investment there in the US, we have QIA investments and we have QP investments and so on, that poses a risk. Although that legislation has been around for a while and not really being looked at as something serious that could happen, with President Trump, I think, things changed. Things could happen, and I think politicians will tell me more than I could on that area. So that was basically the reason why. So I took that to His Highness, presented to him exactly what I just told you in a much more professional presentation and a PowerPoint and so on. And the decision was, and this was just a week after I was appointed as minister, I said, okay, now I can go and, and do this because I believe in it. And I went, I presented it, they gave me the okay, I announced it, and then went there and gave a farewell speech and left. So my first and last meeting of OPEC as a minister. Of course, everybody tried to politicize this. As politics here and political science guys and girls, but the only thing politically that I think would be you could link it is it's easier for me to leave when the blockade is on than if it wasn't. Mm-hmm. That's my only link, okay? Because because when you're sitting there with the big players in OPEC that are also GCC members, and you could be put in a position where. Although we take our own decisions, we've demonstrated that, and His Highness takes his decisions, solely on what he believes in is right for the country. But it would put you in an awkward position if they say, please don't leave or something like that. But when the blockade is there, it's easier. So you see, I give you a political twist to it.
So what are your goals for the ministry and for the industry? short and long term?
Basically, since I was appointed as the CEO, maybe if I tell you that story, it will cover it. Basically, what I did is said, okay, we need new men. I'm the son of QP. I know things that I didn't like and I wanted to change. But at the end of the day, it is not I, it is we. You have to have a team. And the team is what delivers. It's not you personally. It can be, I can't say I can change QP or the industry. And so you have to have a great team to do that. So what we did is basically I identified, so if I want to take solely the credit for something, is choosing the best leaders. Okay, so I take credit for that. I chose the best leaders in every discipline that I wanted, and then we as a team collectively looked at what we wanted to do for QP. But I had a vision, basically I had about 13, 14 points that I wanted to accomplish from day one. I had written down that I wanted to do. And I wanted to restructure QP. I wanted to merge some of the downstream companies. I wanted to merge RasGas, Qatar Gas. I wanted to integrate the international oil company QPI into QP because it doesn't make sense having two. We had a marketing company called Tasweeq. I saw no way of you producing and not selling your own product and having a separate entity. There is no link between production and the market. You have to touch the market with marketing, so you understand what's going on. So brought the marketing into QP. So all these things that we did is, I brought the best team, then we went for, putting all these things together. What we were able to accomplish, and some people saw this as, I'm trying to downsize for just cutting manpower or anything, everything. What we did is methodically said, okay, if I want to, let's say, if I want to drill a well, okay, so I need a drilling rig to drill a well. How many people do I want? So I brought the best consultant that does this. So I said, okay, this is a drilling rig. I need to drill the well in 10 days. So how many people do I need to drill that well in 10 days? And then benchmark me with international best practice. So give me a benchmark. What am I supposed to do if how does Shell look like? Exxon, Total, Shell. And then benchmark across the board. And if I had 14 and I should be 10, then I say, okay, if I have competent people that can do this job, it should be 10. But maybe today I don't have that competency, so it can be 11 or 12, and I need to work on competency. So it was things like that we did that ultimately basically said, okay, this is how many people you need in this sector or this department and so on. And across the board, that's what we did. We didn't start with saying, I want to decrease 20% of manpower, or it doesn't work that way. And that was not the intention. The conclusion of the consequence of what happened, okay, is that we reduced the manpower tremendously. But it wasn't an objective. The objective was, how can I be benchmarked? So what I wanted to do is have everything. There is, I don't know if all of you are familiar, but when you're first quartile, it's basically you're in the top quarter of an industry, the best, quarter of the industry. So the objective was to have a KPI that measures every company that's a subsidiary, including QP itself, to be top quartile in international benchmark. Okay, so that was the objective. So every board has an objective. There is a KPI, and we measure that KPI. Last year, the best in the industry in Qatar in operations was QP itself. In the past, it used to be RasGas or Qatar Gas or Capcor. Somebody else is better. Okay, and I think we've turned it around. It's not that we're better by far. We're all first quartile, but also I'm putting competition in who's better in measuring it. And this is third party that we look at so that they can. So you're having competition between them to being. So to us, safety, reliability, and environmental compliance are the top things that we measure, and then efficiency. So we put all that in place. We were able to reduce our annual operating cost for running the entire country's oil and gas industry by 4 billion Qatari riyal annually. And that is straight pocket, basically pocketed into the to our treasury, which means the government gets an additional 4 billion Qatari riyal. And this is something that I can't just talk about or brag about. This is something the Minister of Finance says, thank you. Okay, because I can't just say I'm doing it and he doesn't see the 4 billion. So it's very measurable, and these are tangible results that you can actually see. So after we finished all that, we said, okay, what's our strategy for the future, which is the question that you asked. Basically, the strategy, I had a vision of what I wanted for the country's oil and gas going forward, as far as a vision and diversity and international presence and so on. But what I did is I said, okay, this is the blueprint of what I think I want. This is the best in my view. I brought my leadership team. I asked them to go and work on the strategy based on overall, wanting to reach a certain, we measure ourselves with production. So we produce 4.8 million barrel oil equivalent of oil today. So what target do I want to reach? So there are other things and elements, but in a nutshell, that's really the crux of the matter. So basically we said, okay, this is what I want to do. I asked my leadership team, about 12 people. I said, this is, you have basically homework to go and do. So go and work with this. They brought, one of the best strategy consultants to be, the consultants are overrated in a big way, by the way. Consultants consultants are very good facilitators and benchmark people. They can give you good benchmark. They can give you good data. They can basically give you different views of things. They can be a bouncing board on your ideas. But at the end of the day, it is what you want them to design that they will design for you. So we brought consultants in to work with these 12 guys. They went and worked on the strategy, not me. So when it was completed 8 months later, they came and presented to me their strategy. So now the buy-in is basically, they have to work on their strategies, not mine. So we put this together. We agreed on the final strategy. Of course, there were tweaks, there were differences in views and so on. At the end, it's our strategy. We presented it to our board, and I presented it to His Highness the Emir. And basically, our strategy is to really be top producer in the country, is to increase our value of resources in country as far as the natural resources as much as possible. It is to maintain our leadership position in the sense of always being ahead in the LNG sector and growing that and so on. There was a question about Australia or Qatar and who's first or second. That's not it. It's really how can you grow to become better and bigger and steadily grow your position to have a great resource like gas that's for the future, and you're part of that big picture. And that's where I can talk about what we did there. But and enhance our petrochemical sector is another pillar of our strategy. And looking at energy efficiency and renewable, we're building a 700 megawatt power plant that will be operational late next year or early 2021 with partners here. But it's a full-fledged power plant that will be 700 megawatt. So these are the things that we put as a strategy. And then you've heard about things that we've gone into exploration. It's part of it is external. So we're in Mexico. We bought 30% of all reserves and assets of ExxonMobil Argentina. We are in Brazil. We just had a big gas discovery with Total in South Africa. We're announcing a discovery in a couple of days that I can't tell you about, but I'm giving you now a sneak preview that there will be a big announcement. But we have a discovery in another country that we'll be announcing on Wednesday. We are in Cyprus. We are, as an LNG producer, we're selling everywhere. Basically LNG, everybody that buys LNG almost buys from Qatar.
Thank you, Your Highness. I want to give a chance for the audience to ask questions, but perhaps
Please.
I could ask one last question for now at least. Are there workforce skill gaps in the energy sector? So, and if so, what are they and how might one ameliorate them? And more specifically to our community here, what can we here as Georgetown graduates, historians, economists, faculty members contribute to fulfilling the gap in energy policy research for Qatar and the region?
You see, regarding development and training and gaps, there is one thing that is, we talked about efficiency, cutting costs, and so on. I mean, there are two things that we did not touch in all this exercise. We've reached $28 during my period. I mean, my period is probably will go down as one of the hardest periods to run an oil and gas industry because, when I came in, it was, when I restructured QP, by the way, a lot of people don't realize, it was $95. So I didn't do it for the price. When we finished, it was $75. So it had already come down. But people were always thinking about cutting costs. And I was doing it for real efficiency. But when we finished, and then it came to $28, we were already there. So we didn't cut any manpower after that. You see what I mean? So it was just an efficiency exercise that translated into us having that. But it was, basically when you look at all what we have done, the highest budget in training. So I was, in the lowest price, and then the blockade came, is the difficulty in this period. But the highest budget in the history of Qatar Petroleum for training and development was in 2015, 16, 17, 18. The highest training budget ever by QP in its entire existence, okay? I'm a big believer in training and developing our people, okay? But it is customized training. We have an annual leadership development program that we have a theme of things we want to do. We have a rollout of a lot of development programs for different categories of manpower at different levels and so on. And we're going to do much more. With Georgetown, and things we could do, we could look at things we can do together. I'm not certain exactly where and how, because the economics part maybe is something that relates to us. And there is the geopolitical side. I try always not to mix politics with business. And one of the beauties of our business and what we do, if there is a very clear, in Qatar, it's very clear. Oil and gas business in QP has nothing to do with the government and interference of government on any decision. So if you look at our corporate governance and what we have, we're like any international oil company as far as the governance, the approval processes, and transparency, ethics, all that. It's very, very segregated, and there is no link. So if somebody goes and talks to His Highness about a gas deal or wanting a discount on gas price or anything that politicians would bring up, he'd say, fine, I open the door for you to go and discuss with QP. We welcome everybody with open arms, but you deal B2B, business to business. It's not for the government to interfere. That gives credibility. It gives, it shows that we're transparent, we're ethical, we do things the right way, and that's why we have such a success in joint ventures and expanding around the world.
Thank you. We'll now open the floor for questions. We have a microphone somewhere, right? Is there a microphone? And let's start with students first, with some questions from the students.
Yeah, the difficult questions from faculty.
And then we'll open it to everyone else.
We used to love our teachers. Is it the same still? Love professors?
So, questions? Students, no questions? Well, in that case, we will open it to... Okay. Okay, we'll open it to everyone. Any questions? Please, yes. We have a question here, please.
Should I go there or should
No, no, they will bring the mic. They will bring the mic.
It's not really a question, it's more of a confirmation of His Excellency and what he said. I'm a own QP, own little boy. Like I joined QP back in '99, and I spent over 19 years within QP. And what I want to say is that the oil and gas industry within the country in here, it doesn't really just focus on developing engineers. At the moment right now, I'm the head of production in Al Jazeera Al Arabiya. So I went from an engineer to a position of management within the country. They have developed us in a way in order to solve problems and to be objective and in order to work on an international environment with all the training that we received over the years. I joined them finishing high school, graduating from the University of Tulsa in Oklahoma as a UPP 19 student, 18 actually. I'm trying to make myself younger. But graduated chemical engineering, went all the way to standardization and quality, being introduced to auditing and the world of KPIs and quality improvement, and all the way to integrity. And now we were highlighted as engineers and as QP boys to get to leading positions within the country. As if I'm looking back at my UBB 18 students, you would see like the head of exhibitions that is in charge right now of the jewelry exhibition at the moment. He is a metallurgy student, graduated from El Paso University. So we are involved within the country in all aspects and not only the oil and gas company. Right now I'm a student in HBKU, studying digital humanities, which is gonna put more into my new position within Al Jazeera. So they teach us, or they implement within our heads, that education and training and improvement and exploring different positions while keeping and refraining to integrity, quality, and leadership on an international level. And that kind of mindset set up all what we can say as our generation, millennials, the beginning of millennials. Thank you very much, appreciate it.
Thank you. Do you wish to comment?
No, there's a comment only, no question.
There is a question there.
Sorry about that, just I have to say this.
No, no, thank you. Oli?
I think somebody...
Thank you. First, thank you very much for being here. We're very happy to have you. I have a question. So although you guys are in Cyprus already, I was wondering, since Sheikh Tamim went to Lebanon, if there are any future QP plans to expand to the newly discovered gas reserves in Lebanon and the Eastern Mediterranean. Thanks.
First, we don't follow His Highness the Emir on where he goes, that we invest. No relation, I said, politics and business. No, we had participated, actually, were approved in the first round of exploration for gas in Lebanon. We had participated in looking at that area. We didn't necessarily like what we saw technically, and we wanted to maybe leave it for a second round. We're actually working in Lebanon now to look at supply of LNG and also for some of the exploration rounds in the future. So wherever there is an exploration or an upstream business possibility, everywhere in the world, where you'll find us there. You'll be surprised where we will announce things. But the thing is that we work in a very confidential way. Our business is competitive. We want to make sure we have a competitive edge and understand things and so on. So we study things very methodically. We have teams that are bound by confidentiality. So even in the entire company, when we announce something, to a lot of people it doesn't, they're not aware. But there's one thing that's important regarding the strategy that I talked about. The strategy, there is a video that could come out, actually, our PR want to bring it out. It's me talking about our strategy for the community. And it's a video that was used. We have the strategy with the management and the board, and then I went and presented with my leadership team to all the management of QP, so the managers, probably 100 people. Then there were champions from each department that went and presented our strategy to everybody in the organization, trickled down all the way to the workshop. So what we wanted to do is to make sure that it's everybody's strategy. So when they open the paper and say that we are in Lebanon, they would not say, what are they doing there? Why? They should be, oh, that's following our strategy, that's fine. Okay, so everybody should be part of that. So Lebanon is definitely there, but you know, sometimes you like going or not, technically or commercially. That was the only reason.
Perfect, thanks.
A question here, and then we'll go back.
And we are in Oman, if you're going to ask us. Okay.
Assalamu alaikum, Yusuf from Oman. I'm glad really to be here today. I'm a guest with Georgetown University. Allah yassalmak. We are really proud about what we are hearing from you, and just would like to know more about the diversification agenda of Qatar. We know that there is a lot of pressure in both supply side and demand side of energy. Talking here about gas and petroleum. Talking about the diversification away from maybe gas, away from oil, to new source of income. This is number one. This is the easy questions. The difficult one, how you are getting the time to manage a lot of tasks. You are the minister, you are the CEO of energy, you are, I'm sure, a member of a lot of board. So that will be a good tips for us to how to manage and get things done in a good and efficient way. Thank you.
Your first question was regarding the
diversification agenda of Qatar.
Okay. So for us, our focus is gas. When we departed OPEC, we mentioned that. That's real. After we departed OPEC, if you notice, we've gone into Mozambique in exploration for gas. We discovered gas in South Africa. We signed the largest single export project ever signed in the US, where we own 70%, Exxon owns 30%, to supply basically the world with 16 million tons of additional LNG, because we're a big player in LNG. We believe long-term gas is the future. Some people call it a transition fuel to something else, which is maybe more renewable and so on. We have an absolute belief that renewables are going to pick up, and they're going to really multiply and maybe double or triple or quadruple in the next couple of decades or so. But in any case, the percentage of its contribution will still be small in relative terms. The gas revolution, if you will, or evolution in the US and around the world, and the people requiring more gas because it's environmentally the friendliest for fossil fuel we have, will continue basically growing the gas business bigger. I think crude and other fuels will be more challenged because people are going to electric cars, CNG cars, and looking for more environmentally burning fuels for power generation and so on. So oil is going to be needed for a long time. It's going to be needed for chemicals and refining and a lot of things, but it will be less of a growth curve, if you will, than gas. So I think we're in the right business. We're blessed to have a lot of gas, and we're focusing also on growing our gas. So when we have the US volume and you have Qatari volume, when you think about, we're looking at this as a worldwide growth. So the arbitrage possibility where we have shipments that could go, instead of going from Qatar to Europe, we could send it from the US and then divert European to US, and there is economic gain of doing that. And I think, it basically increases our capability of having a bigger share of that market, because we are quite strong there. So we want to build on that knowledge and strength and experience that we've built over the years. Time is, I think, I'm a member of the QIA, or our sovereign fund. I'm chairman of the investment committee of the sovereign fund, which is a very important part. And QP. I don't sit on many boards. I mean, there are things where you're, as the minister, obligated to sit on the board. So I'm about, I think, on 4 or 5 boards is the maximum. And I decline any other boards. I've been asked to go on many boards, but I have declined due really specifically to time management issues. But I think the key is to be organized, have a good strategy, and have a great leadership team. And I think if you do that, then you can manage your time better. It is when you are bogged down with actually doing people's work is when you cannot manage your time well. And it is, again, the only thing I take very big credit for is choosing the right people. And I think that's ultimately what makes or breaks the success of any organization.
Thank you.
And we are, by the way, sorry, and we are in Block 52, which is the entire offshore between Oman and Yemen. We are with ENI exploring. So hopefully we'll announce oil or gas discovery in Oman in the next couple of years. Sure? No, that's not Wednesday. You remember Wednesday. Okay. I forgot about Wednesday. Okay. I said, what is he talking about? Yeah. I shouldn't have said that, but anyway. Yeah. Stay tuned on Wednesday. Okay.
Thank you. So you started to touch on this a little bit, but I'm interested to hear more on your thinking about renewables and the sort of context of developing this new solar investment that you have, and in particular, if you're thinking about that in any different manner, even though you are now in this position that is jointly energy minister and head of QP, if there are different logics in those different sort of positions, or if that logic in thinking about renewables is very much the same.
But your question is what about renewables exactly? Our strategy, or can you be more explicit on what do you mean by the question? I will answer you. I just want to understand.
Yeah, absolutely. So why start to invest in renewables now when you obviously have as you said this expertise in this particular industry, so what is the logic for branching into renewables at this point?
You see, if you think that renewables is not going to be a part of the future of society in general, then you're living in a different world. Okay, renewables is a fact. It's going to happen. We're going to have that. As human beings living in this world, we want to have more renewables, to have a cleaner, basically, environment. And if we want to reach our CO2 emission targets, and we want to reach the -2 degrees and all that, if you're really serious about that, then you have to be part of that. If you look at, honestly, if you look at what we have done in Qatar, and sometimes I say things that maybe normally I shouldn't say, but I'm a very frank person. So in Qatar, we've talked about solar for ages. We said we'll do solar research, we'll do a mini project, we'll try different technologies, we'll do different things. Okay? Again, I go back to being an engineer. I'm an executor. I like to deliver. I like to go and say, okay, this is the plan, this is the time we'll finish, and let's do it. So talking about it too much was a lot of the theme in Qatar. Okay, but nobody was really taking, like the Americans say, the bull by the horn and actually getting done. Okay, so for me, I believe in renewables. I think for us, solar is, I think if you ask a child in 2nd grade, he'll tell you Qatar has sun all the time. Okay, so it's not rocket science that you could have the best solar here, but nobody actually wanted or actually went for it, if you will. So I put basically, I talked to the company that we own, a good portion of, QEWC, Qatar Electricity and Water Company. It's a listed company. They're the power producer in the country, so they own a majority share in all the power plants in the country. So I brought them in because they are the experts in power production. So I gave them 60%. We as QP took 40%, okay, of that company. That's a company that I became the chairman of. So I appointed myself the chairman of that company for the sole reason of getting it done and showing that I'm serious about it. It's a very small company, but there was an objective there. So so if you go and do solar and you approve, so what we're doing is an international tender. This company is called Siraj. Siraj is like it's light, basically, in some, I don't know in English exactly, but it's light. It's a lamp here. So So it is light, and so this is the company name. So there will be an international tender. There is an international tender currently where we get the best technology. So we have a piece of land that's already defined in the desert. So basically what we're asking for is give us the best power output from solar, technology-wise and efficiency-wise per square kilometer, because we have scarcity of land. It's a small country. So that's going to be delivered as a project. So we'll have first. So I don't like to go small scale. You have to have economies of scale to get the best pricing and so on. So when we do that, okay, so that's going to be done by end of 20 or early 21. The promise of the country. So I went to 2022 and told them cancel your project, because they had a project where they were pledging as part of the 2022 to have 100 megawatts of solar power. I told them I'm giving you 7 times that, so you can do away with that. It's basically the country's production. It doesn't matter where it comes from. So the plant will be starting in 2020 or 21. I forgot so say first quarter of 2021. But you'll have an actual project. So the objective of that is to have people trained and developed on the best technology available today on actual plant that goes to the grid and that you're actually making use of. What does that do? It also liberalizes gas that could be needed in 2-3 years that would have a power plant for that 700 megawatts, and I can sell it for market price as gas. So I'm getting a double gain, if you will, is getting that competency, trying out a big plant, and gaining economic benefit from liberalizing some of the gas that I would have sold. So does that cover your... And the person of CEO and minister is the same person, so same thinking. Maybe that's the answer to the second. Please.
Your Excellency, thank you very much. My question is about another energy source. Only some kilometers away from here, the UAE is building 4 nuclear power plants to 5.6 gigawatts. The Iranians have a reactor in Bushehr, and the Saudis are apparently considering nuclear power as well. Could you share with us your views on nuclear power for Qatar?
I hope they keep it very safe. It's number one, okay, for our waters in the region. So that's the number one concern I have, is safety, actually. But as far as nuclear for Qatar, we're blessed with a lot of gas. We don't need to get into nuclear now. We are part of some of the nuclear organizations and things that basically keeps it appraised of the technology and knowledge and some of the knowledge of what's going on in that arena. But that's something that we are not looking at seriously now, because we don't think there is a need for us to look at this at this point.
It was just, I was just about to ask about the future of nuclear energy, because I know that in December, I think Qatar was, there was a news report about Qatar's interest in nuclear energy, but obviously it was December and now it's February. So perhaps you guys have moved.
And this December, this last December?
This December, yeah, 2018.
Where did this report come from?
I believe it was in, I don't actually remember which source it was.
That's fine.
But it was just Qatar expressing interest in nuclear energy, but not necessarily any specific plans.
We're in Georgetown. It could be politics also. Politicians talk a lot, so I don't know. Okay.
So this is politics and business, I guess. Here at Georgetown, we like to think of ourselves as preparing students to deal with crises that don't yet exist, but we encourage them to study responses to crises, so that, in the hope that will inform their own thinking and decision-making when they're professionals. And last year I had the opportunity to listen to you address Georgetown Executive MBA students, and you talked about, it was February 2018, the response, QP's response to the blockade. So now we are a year out from then, and I wonder if you can share a bit about QP's response, and then perhaps update us from where you left off last February.
Basically, what happened is after the blockade, in oil and gas companies, you have business continuity plan. plans. And this is put in place. There is a procedure. There are things that are very clear in most of oil and gas companies. And for us, the biggest stress test was actually having, you can never design a drill to mimic what happened in the blockade, because it was really complete blockade of all the resource or sources of supply, and especially Jabal Ali, because Jabal Ali was the main hub for everybody that was re-exporting to the from the region, to everyone in the region. Dubai and Jabal Ali was really the base for the redistribution and supply, whether it's shipments, containers, equipment, a lot of depots that were there in Jabal Ali as a main headquarter for a lot of companies. So we had to deal with a lot of that in the beginning, where we put all, so basically I met with all the CEOs of our companies. We put in place an emergency committee, basically headed by QP, with all the companies in place. Everybody put in place or in action their business continuity plan and executed it beautifully. And it was a great, really, it was great. You know, we are a big expatriate community country, and for us in the oil and gas industry, you know, anywhere from 80 to 70% in different companies are expatriates. And we love having that community of friendship and you know, feeling of family, where you have, you know, 80, 90 nationalities coming together and working together as one family. And most of the, you know, the people you work with, you stay with and talk with more than your own families, and sometimes. So it was great for everybody to pull together. It was the effort of everybody coming together, and that's why I think, you know, His Highness, you know, in the UN address, thanked everybody in the country, you know, expatriates and Qataris alike, because he felt that, you know. I'm sure I never talked to him about it, but that, you know, it was very well, it was very clear to me that he recognized that, because we recognize that as leadership of a lot of companies and so on. So it was really a group effort to put that together to make sure it works. It worked very well. We had issues in the beginning where we had to air freight some things and so on. But companies adapt, and a lot of suppliers had to go to different supply sources. Our marine guys did very well in putting, you know, new direct shipping lines from different countries that are sources of a lot of the supply and so on. And business people with business needs, I think, match, and they can adapt and change things. It became a little bit more expensive in the beginning, then it normalized back again. And the way we look at it, a lot of countries are islands, and they're living, you know, very well. We're a very resourceful country, and we have a lot of, you know, capabilities, and we touch a lot of people. One of the things that you know, if you realize, I think a lot of people don't realize how many countries we supply. I mean, if you look at the effect Qatar has on lives of people, we talked about the environment and renewable, but the cleanest fossil fuel known to mankind is gas. So we supply gas to countries to use for household or use or electricity between 5 to 30% of different countries, and we supply, you know, Japan, Korea, China, Taiwan, Thailand, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Kuwait, UAE, Jordan, Egypt. And this is all LNG, it's not pipeline. Even the UAE is not a pipeline. You know, we have a pipeline, but that's just LNG. Turkey, Italy, Spain, Belgium, Holland, Poland, UK. And it's between 5 to 30%. So imagine if the production stops in Qatar. Okay, you see the countries that are affected. It's quite, you know, amazing that such a small country, you know, we have had 12,500 shipments of LNG. We've never defaulted one shipment. Okay, it speaks volumes about the competency of our industry, because, you know, safety, reliability, and efficiency of operations is paramount to everybody, because you want people that are working in our facilities to go back home safe, and you want it to be done efficiently in the right way, and so on. So I think we touch a lot of people, and we're very happy that we are able to help environmentally a lot of people and a lot of countries to achieve their goals.
Maybe we'll have one final question.
Whatever.
Please go ahead.
Yeah.
I think we have one more there. I want to complete everybody that wants to ask, and then we leave.
Okay. Thank you, Excellency, for such an insightful talk. My question is really around workforce diversity, and wanted to understand a bit what QP is currently doing in terms of feminizing its executive suite, in particular the board and the executive. Because this morning when I was on your website, I couldn't help but notice how underrepresented women are on your board and executive, and wanted to get your view in terms of what you're doing to tap into that labor market. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Yeah, on the board itself or the manpower in general?
I was more concerned about the board, because when you have females on the board, that encourages other women, even in lesser roles, to apply. Okay. But when you look at the board and you see that women are underrepresented, that might actually intimidate you in terms of getting into QP.
If you compare us to international oil and gas companies, the percentage of women in our oil and gas industry is higher than international.
Yes, I do,
so,
yeah.
Yeah, and then, but you see, they started later, okay? So for you to reach a board level, if you look at the board of QP, Deputy Emir, Vice Chairman is myself, Minister of Finance, Minister of Treasury, sorry, Minister of Commerce, and you have the CEO of Qatar Gas, you have the ex-upstream or the ex-CEO of QPI, okay, retired QP upstream, retired QP operation director, okay. So for boards of this level, looking at the nation's wealth and future, you need representation that is extremely competent in the industry and have the experience. So the two guys that are, so between, the three guys that are not the ministers are all, 55, 62, 65, okay? So you need experience. So these guys have 40 years, 45 years experience each in the industry. So to have a board, myself, 33 years of experience in the industry. So if you have people that, so these started, these guys that are there now have started in the 70s. In the 70s, not many women wanted to get into the oil and gas industry. They see us as a dirty industry and roughnecks, and they don't like us. Okay, so now we are much more appealing to women. Okay, because they see the companies and the professionalism and so on. So now we're attracting a lot of women. So we have managers and directors, and we have board members that are in our companies that are women, but not in QP board. But we do have women board members. We have women that are in leadership positions. We have leading, whether it's HR, we have in finance, we have in engineering, we have engineers in the field. Women are very well represented in our industry, and we don't distinguish in gender in employing. Okay, we have a quota for Qataris that we want to bring in every year, because when you bring in Qataris, you need people to develop them and train them and so on, and we choose on competency, and that's how it works. But girls are I don't want to say smarter than guys in Qatar, because they're not. They work harder, and our guys are lazy, some of them, and they don't work as hard. So you find girls are scoring higher, so they get through universities, and they get better grades and so on, which is great. But they're all smart people. It's just how dedicated are you on yourself and developing yourself. That's but the workforce that's coming into our company is much more women than men.
Thank you, Your Excellency. I think you said that you were appointed as a CEO in 2014.
Yeah.
That was when the first GC crisis happened. To what extent has the first GC crisis and the rumors back then of a possible blockade contribute to the business continuity during the blockade of 2017?
It's a very good question, because actually before that, in the 2008 or 10, I forgot, there was a crisis even before that. That's actually what started looking at us. It's a very good question, because that's what started the whole issue of business continuity on some elements. The normal business continuity in companies is always there. It's for manpower business continuity, is for different things that you look at. But one of the things we looked at was when there was a threat of Hormuz block, and I don't remember exactly what year, 10, 11, or something like that, where there was a Hormuz block threat. And then we had to look at, okay, can we sustain our own electricity, water, and so on? How long will, if that lasts, how long, and how can we sustain our own? And we did an exercise around that. But that was the beginning of it. The second was in the 14, where we looked at some of these elements, but not as extensive. We never thought it could reach what how extensive it was looked at, or it became with this blockade. But we did well, and I think it opened opportunities. It helped us look at different things. If you see the program that we just launched last week, called Tawteen, or nationalizing, if you will. We have looked at all our supply chain and said, okay, this bottle, I have the raw material for it. You see the Baladna milk. They were bringing sheets of plastic to make the bottles from outside. We had just a small transformation in a plant of specs. And all the bottles are now, the plastic bottles for Baladna are manufactured in Qatar, from our own factories. So there are things that we were saying, there were a lot of things where the government was telling us, don't get into this business because we don't want to compete with Saudi Arabia or Kuwait because we're one economy. Okay, so we were trying to protect that we have an economy where, okay, you have milk in Saudi Arabia and that's good business for the region, so we don't compete with that factory and different things. So in Tawteen, we have 100 factories where we saw that we have the supply source, we need that product for the country or for QP, and then we're saying we're going to offer to actually buy and have an offtake agreement with you for 5 years to give you a sustainable business, so that we want to start some of these companies where they are in the free zone, the majority will be in the free zone, where they can learn how to become a good business. If QP buys, if the blockade is not going to last forever, Aramco, ADNOC, Iran, Iraq will need these products. So we want them to have a second factory that will have an export capability, and then you're creating good SME and so on. The other element is we've introduced in-country value. In-country value is basically everybody that comes in and has a tender that, we have everything in open competition for all our products and supply chain. So when you apply, you're going to have basically a certificate that says your ICV number, in-country value number, is X. So that number, if you have it, the higher it is, the more discount you will be given in the eyes of the analysis commercially. So if you're 110 million in your bid, there could be somebody that's 100 million, and you actually look like you're 98. I actually pay you 110, but that balance is paid at the end of the term of the contract, where I have had things that I judge you by, but ICV is like your auditor is giving you this annually. So I look at training. How much are you training your people? Because I want my competency of my contractors to be better. It's how much are you spending in country? So it's basically all the money that you're gaining, how much are you giving back into the economy? So how many apartments are you renting? How many workshops? Where do you bank? Where are your subcontractors from? So somebody coming out of Dubai or UK or whatever and just has an agent here and supplies loses out basically in 10 to 15%. So you'll always compete if you set up shop in country and then have and a total economic gain. And we think we can increase the GDP by 1.6% annually by doing that.
Well, on this optimistic note, thank you, Your Excellency.
Thank you.